Join me as we learn Chumash for today, Parshas Vayechi, the first Torah reading for Sunday of Parshas Vayechi, chapter 47, verse 28. We finished a previous Torah reading of Parshas Vayigash, of how the Jewish people settled in the land of Goshen, how Yosef was in control and owned almost all the property of the land of Egypt and bringing in lots of money to Pharaoh. Now the Jewish people continue to prosper and grow and settling in the land of Goshen. This week's Torah reading brings us to the last days of Yaakov's life. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim, and Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim, Shva'asrei Shana, 17 years, the last 17 years of his life. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav, and the years of Yaakov at this point was 107 Shanim Arboim U'Ma'as Shana, 147 years. Rashi, Vayechi Yaakov, Lama Parsha Zustuma. If you notice, between every parsha, there's 3 pays, 3 samachs, there's a space between the parsha. When one learns Parshas Vayigash and Vayechi, you'll see before Vayechi, there is no space between the last Torah reading and this Torah reading as well. Why is this parsha closed? Meaning, why is there no opening before it? Kivan, this is because Shenifter Yaakov Avinu, because Yaakov passed in this week's Torah reading, Nistamu Einayim, the eyes of the Jews and the Libam and their heart, shall Yisrael Mitzaris Hashibud, because of the suffering of the enslavement that happens afterwards, that happens after his passing. Sheyischilu l'shabdam, that they started making them work. Davar acher, another explanation is, Bikesh legalis asaketz. Yaakov wanted to reveal the end of days to the Jewish people, to his children. He wanted to tell them when Mashiach was coming, Lefanov. As later on he tells them, Eyosru, gather around and I will tell you the end of days. V'nista mimenu, and it was blocked from him and he was not able to do it. The Rebbe learns from here the lesson that Yaakov teaches every Jew. Bikish Yaakov legalis asaketz. Yaakov wanted to reveal the time of the coming of Mashiach, that every single one of us should want and desire to bring about and reveal the coming of Mashiach. Verse 29. Vayikruvu Yemei Yisrael Lamos, and it came close to them, and it came the time, drew near for Yisrael to die. Vayikra Livnei Yosef, and he called his son Yosef. Vayomer, and he tells him, Imna matzasichein beinecha, if you will find favor in your eyes, Simra yadcha tachas yirechi, please place your hand under my thigh. Vasisa imadi chesed vemes, and you'll do with me genuine kindness. Al nasig bereinim in Mitzrayim, please do not bury me in Egypt. Rashi, Vayikruvu Yemei Yisrael. Kol mishanemra by kriva lomos. Any time where it says the terminology getting close to die, he doesn't come to the eyes and the ears of his father. Yitzchak chai kufpei. Yitzchak lived 180 years. For Yaakov, and Yaakov lived kuf mem zayin only 147. By David you find a similar number kreva. Aviv chai tough shanim, because his father Yishai lived 400, some people say 80 years. V'hu chai ayin, and he only lived 70 years. Vayikra livnei Yosef, and he called his son Yosef. Why he called his son Yosef? L'misha yechelus v'yadi lasis. The reason why Yosef, and that son particularly because he was the one that had the power to do it, because he was the viceroy of Egypt. Simna yadcha, hold, put your hand, meaning hold the place of where the bris is, v'yishava, and swear, because when a person takes an oath, he has to hold a object of a mitzvah, and the only physical object of the mitzvah was the bris that was done at the time. Chesed v'yemes, genuine strength, genuine kindness, and Rashi explains because why is this considered pure kindness? Chesed sha'isim imamesim, kindness you do with dead people. Who chesed shalamis is genuinely kind, because it is impossible, and you do not look to see how that person will reciprocate in kind. It's the only time where a person can do something kind and not anticipate being rewarded for it. Do not bury me in Egypt. Why didn't Yaakov want to be buried in Egypt? He knew that there were going to be the plague of lice, which is going to affect the earth. And it's going to be lice going to be crumbling all over my body. And therefore, he did not want to be buried in Egypt. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, when the time comes for the resurrection of the dead, those that are buried outside of Egypt are going to have to go through different tunnels and roll into the land of Israel. And therefore, he didn't want to go through that suffering as well. Another reason, being that he was the one that brought an end to the hunger. Therefore, he was concerned that the Egyptians may make him into an idol and make him into considered a god. And therefore, he said, I don't want that to happen, and therefore bury me in the land of Israel. Where is it going to be? Therefore, he asks of his son as follows: V'shachavti im avaisai, and I'm going to lie with down with my fathers in the Sasanim in Mitzrayim. You must carry me out of Egypt, and you'll bury me in their burial place. Vayomer, and Yosef said to him, Anochi esech idvarecha, I will do as you say. Verse 30. V'shachavti im avaisai, vav zu mechuber l'mayla d'chlis hamikra. Whenever it says the vav is connecting to the previous verse. Simna yod chatach yisreichel yishavali. The meaning, and this is what he's telling him. I want you to take an oath. V'ani seifi lishkav im avaisai. And my end is that I want to be able to be buried and lay with my fathers. That means I am making you ve'ata tiseinim in Mitzrayim, and you will then carry me out of Egypt and bury me there. Meaning that he's making him take an oath on that fact. V'yein loymar, and you cannot say v'shachavti im avaisai, that I will live with my fathers. It has to do with the burial. Hashkiveni, meaning hashkiveni im avaisai memorial, I'll lay down with my fathers in the cave. Because it already says afterwards in the Sasanim Mitzrayim, he'll carry me out of Egypt, and you'll bury me. So what's he saying? That you're going to bury me? He says it later, you're going to bury me. So therefore, this must be going to what he said before. The oid, even more so. Anytime we find in the verse the word shchiva im avaisav, to lie with his fathers, that's the actual passing and not the burial. So you have the passing, the carrying out of Egypt, and then stage number 3 is the burial. As we see this, Vayishkav David im avaisav, David, when it talks about that he passed, he lied down with his fathers, and only afterwards it says Vayikavi bir David, that he was buried in the land of David. Vayomer, and he says, Yishavali, I want you to swear to me. Vayishavalai, and he swore to him. Vayishtachu Yisrael arei shamita, and Yisrael bowed to the head of the bed. Rashi, verse 31. Vayishtachu Yisrael tala bidane sigidle. Even why is it respectful that he should bow to his son? But this is like a usual terminology that people say that even a fox, as its success, when it's successful, it is bowed to. That means even though Yosef, who was on a lower level than Yaakov, at this point he was worthy enough because he is the ruler, and therefore Yaakov bowed to him. Al Roi Shamita, wine the head of the bed. Hafech Atzme, he turned himself to the side, to the head of the bed, L'tzad HaShechina, to the divine presence. From here our sages tell us, as it says in the tractate of Shabbos, that the divine presence is above the head of an individual, and therefore Yaakov turned his way to the head of a chaylav, or sick person. That the head of a sick person, that the head of the bed of an ill individual, that's where the divine presence rests. Davar acher, another explanation, al rosh hamita, meaning at the head of the bed, meaning al shahisa mitase shlema. He was thankful for the fact that it's coming the end of his life and all his children were perfect. There was no one evil amongst them. Shalei Yosef, even Yosef, Melech, who he was a king in the land of Egypt. And he was captured amongst the nations of the world. And still in all, he was righteous, holy, and pure. Chapter 48, verse 1. And it was after those words, after that, what his father told him that he's about to die. Yosef, and Yosef was told, behold, your father is not ill, your father's ailing, he's not well. And he took his 2 sons with him, as Menashe and Ephraim, Menashe and Ephraim. At that time, Menashe was 25 years old, and Ephraim 24 years old. And he brought them to get blessed by their grandfather. Yosef, who is the one that told Yosef? One of the people told him this. This is a shorthand verse. Some explain Ephraim, who was Ephraim. Ephraim used to study by Yaakov, the Talmud, and learn. When Yaakov got sick, in the land of Goshen, Ephraim went to his father, the Mitzrayim, to Egypt, to tell him that his father is ill. And he took his 2 sons with him, that Yaakov should bless them before he passes. Verse 2. Yaakov, and it was told to Yaakov, and said, behold, your son Yosef is coming to you. And he strengthened himself. Vayeshev al hamita, and he sat up on the bed. Vayaged, who's the one that told him? Hamagid, the person who came and told the news, Liyakiv to Yaakov. Falei Pirsha doesn't say who. The Harbe Mikrois, we find a lot of times in the verse where it keeps it short. Kitzrei Lashon is short, that it doesn't say who and what, when did it. It just tells us the activity that happened. Vayischazek Yisrael, and he strengthened himself. Omar, Yaakov said to himself, Afal Pishubani, even though he's my son and he really has to respect me, Melech, who he's a king, Vachalik Lekovid, and I will give him respect. From here we learn that one always has to give respect to kingdom. Even though if the king himself may not be worthy of it, still in all you have to give respect. So we find Moshe gave respect to the kingdom of Egypt, even though he was the king of Egypt and he was hurting the Jewish people. That all of your servants will come down to me. And so to by Eliyahu, when he talks to Achav the king, by Yishtani Masnav, that he put on a proper cloak and garbed himself quickly the way he came to be respectful before the king. So no matter how the king may act, you still have to have respect for the office, so to speak, of the king. Verse number 4. Vayomer Eli, and he said, Vayomer Yaakov el Yosef, verse 3. Vayomer Yaakov el Yosef, and Yaakov said to Yosef, Kel Shaddai Nire Eli, God Almighty appeared to me, in the Luz, Eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan, Vayivarach Oisi, and he blessed me. Verse 4. Vayomer Eli, and he said to me, Hineni maficha v'erbesicha, behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous. U'naseticha lekal goyim, and I will make you a community of people. Lekal amim, a community of people. V'nasati esaretz azos, and I will give this land to you, Lazaracha, to your descendants, Acharecha, that come after you, Achuz HaSoilam, as a permanent estate. Rashi, U'nasaticha lekal amim. This is what Yaakov is telling Yosef. Bisrani, God, told me, that will come from me more communities of people, more nations. Who is this going to be? More tribes. Even though God already gave me the promise, Goyu Kahal Goyim, a nation and another community of nations. Goyu Amarli, when God told me the nations, who that three, Al Binyamin. Kahal Goyim, a community of nations. Hadei L'shnaim, that's another two. Levad Binyamin, besides Binyamin. But I didn't have any children afterwards. Because one of my tribes, one of my children, are going to be split lechalik into two. And now, that gift that God has gifted me, that one of my children, their children are going to be considered as part of the tribes, and I'm going to give to you. And with that, he continues in verse number 5. Now, the two children that were born to you, the land of Egypt, until my coming here, Mitzrayim and Egypt, Lihaim, they will be considered as mine. Ephraim and Menashe, Kiruvim v'Shimon Yuli. Ephraim and Menashe will be to me just like Reuven and Shimon. Verse 5, Rashi says as follows, meaning, before I came here, they were born from when you separated from me until I came to meet you here today. That means to their mind, they're going to be part of my children. They'll be part of one of the tribes. That each one of them will get their own allotted portion in the land of Israel. Verse 6. However, those offsprings that are born to you after them, they will be on your name. They will inherit your portion. When they inherit the land, they will be included under their brothers' names of Ephraim and Menashe. Verse 6, Rashi says, if you can have other children besides Ephraim and Menashe, they're not going to be counted amongst my children. They'll be included in the tribes of Ephraim and Menashe. They will not have their own name concerning the other tribes, as when it's discussed about inheriting the land of Israel. Rashi then continues and notes, even though that when the land of Israel was split, as we see in the book of Numbers, it went according to the amount of people, the population of every tribe, and every person was able to get the same, besides the firstborn of each family were able to get double. They got double. But the only ones that were called tribes were Menashe and Ephraim. What this refers to, that when it came to make the allotted portions and it came to decide who should get which portion of the land of Israel, they took all the tribes, and Menashe and Ephraim were included as part of the tribes that were divided, Nasi l'chol shevet, and therefore they also had a leader for each one of their tribes, the Golem Lazeh, and they also had a flag for their tribe. They were counted as all the tribes, as everybody else. There was no change, no difference. They were considered as one of Yaakov's family. Verse 7. Va'ani. And now I selected you for distinction for the following reason, he says. Va'ani, when I was coming, bevoyim mipadon, when I came from Padon, Meisa alai Rachel, your mother Rachel died on me, be'eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan, be'derech, while we were still traveling on the way, ba'oid kivras aretz, and there was still a good stretch of land, lavi Ephras, until we would reach Ephrat. Ve'ekbereh Hashem, and I buried her there on the side of the land, on the road, be'derech Ephras, on the way to Ephras, which today he Beis Lachem, which is called Bethlehem. Rashi, verse 7. Va'ani bevoyi mipadon, va'af al pi shematriach alecha lilichen likaver beretz Canaan. You may ask, this is going back to where Yaakov asks of Yosef that he should be buried in the land of Israel. And he's saying, you may ask, 1 second, you didn't do that to my mother. You buried her right on the spot. And even though I'm bothering you to take me to the land of Israel after my passing, likaver beretz Canaan, to be buried in Canaan, which is a very long distance, a very far stretch away. I didn't do that to your mother. She died near Beis Lachem. Kivras haaretz. What does it mean? Kivras haaretz, midas haaretz, a big stretch of land. Veheim alpayim am, about 2,000 amma, which is kemidas techum Shabbos, the amount of land that a person is not allowed to walk on. The amount you can walk on Shabbos, and after that you can no longer walk on Shabbos. Kedivra Ramesh Hadarshan, like Ramesh Hadarshan says. And don't say, I cannot say that it wasn't that the rain held me back from bringing her to Hebron, because at that time Esagrir was the summer. It was land. The land was dry. It was actually the beginning of fall. And everything, there was nothing that should hold me back. It was an easy travel that I should be able to go and take her. And I did not take her to Hebron, but I buried her there. I didn't even take her to Beis Lechem, which is at the entrance, to take her to a place which is settled. And I know that in your heart you have issues with it, a lie. And you're upset. Why didn't I take her to a place and bury her properly? Why on the side of the road? You should know, I didn't do this on my own. It was by divine intuition that God told me I should do it. That I buried her there, that later on she should be able to help her children at the destruction of the Holy Temple. That when the king of Uzradon, the king of Babylonia, will exile the Jewish people from the land of Israel, they will stand there, they will go past her gravesite, her burial place. And Rachel is going to, and Rachel will come out and cry for the Jewish people. And she's going to pray that God have pity and mercy on the Jewish people. As it says in the book of Jeremiah, as it says, that the voice upon heaven is heard. And who is it? Rachel mevakel baneh, that Rachel is crying for her children. And God answers her, I heard your crying. There's going to be reward for your actions. That the Jews will ultimately return to their homeland. Rashi adds, and he says that the word kivras oretz also comes, that it means the measurement of the Tchum Shabbos. He says the Unklis Tirgem, however, the Unklis translates a kruv ara, meaning kadei shir charishas yom, the amount of space that it takes to plow for one day. And I say sha'ilam kesef, there was a certain amount of space, a certain measurement, which means the amount that you plow was considered a measurement. And like it says, that we find in other places in the Talmud, terminology karba, which is a certain space, a measurement of how much a person can plow or how much the animal can plow in a certain distance. Verse 8. Vayar Yisrael l'spenei Yosef, and Yisrael saw the children of Yosef. Vayomer, and he said, Mi eila, who are these? Verse 8. What does it mean? He didn't see them. I thought Ephraim was learning with him. What does it mean he didn't know who they are? But he wanted to know, Bikish Levarcham, he wanted to bless them, and the Shechina went away from him. The divine presence left him. Why did the divine presence leave him? He saw that two evil people, Yeravam and Achav, were going to come from them. The kings of the land of the 10 tribes. Losis Ephraim are going to come from Ephraim. The Yehu Banav and Yehu and his children Menashe from Menashe. So therefore he sees, oi, look what's going to come from these children. And therefore he said, Me'ela, who are these children? Who are these children? Are they Sheinari Lebracha? Are they worthy for a blessing? That they're not worthy for a blessing. Can I give them a blessing? 9, verse 9. Vayomer Yosef alav, and Yosef says to his father, Bonaihem, these are my children. Asher nosan li alikim bezeh, that God gave me with this. Vayomer, and he said, Kochem ne'elai. If so, bring them to me, vavarachem, so that I can bless them. Rashi, verse 9, Bazeh, what does it mean that God gave them to me with this? He showed him the document that he was properly married. And Yaakov saw how his father was struggling, that divine presence left him. And therefore Yosef begged and prayed to God. And the divine presence came back to Yaakov, and he was able to bless his children. Once the divine presence came back, he was able to bless them. That's why it says in the verse in Hosea, meaning, I became used to, meaning, I brought divine presence on Yaakov, and because of that, Bishvil Ephraim, this way Ephraim should be blessed, because Yaakov took him in his arms and blessed them. This concludes the first Torah reading of Parshas Vayechi.